The spotlight felt hot on my face. I stood at the podium of the charity gala I had spent 6 months organizing, my hands gripping the sides. I opened my mouth to welcome our donors, but my husband, David, was already walking onto the stage. He smiled, that perfect charismatic smile the whole city knew, and gently took the microphone from my hand. The room applauded. They thought he was being supportive. He leaned in, his voice a cold whisper just for me. "The investors are here, darling. You're in over your head. Let the grown-ups handle it." He turned to the crowd, a hero, while I stood there, the humiliated wife. What he didn't know was that I was the only one in the room who knew exactly what he'd done. But that moment of public disrespect was just the final crack in a foundation that had been crumbling for years. To understand how we got there, you need to see what I saw 3 months earlier. My alarm went off at 5 a.m., like it always did. The house was dark, the only sound the faint hum of the air conditioner. This was my time, the only time that was truly mine. My battlefield wasn't a boardroom. It was the sprawling granite island in our kitchen, and it was already covered. My laptop sat next to a humming Nespresso machine, which sat next to 3 different colored planners, one for the house, one for the gala, and one for our son, Leo. At 5:30 a.m., I was prepping Leo's meds. Our son is 8. He's the light of my life, and his body is a puzzle we're still trying to solve. His muscles don't always obey his mind, and his mind sometimes gets stuck in loops that scare him. He requires logistics. I opened the binder. It was a 5-inch thick, heavy-duty Avery binder, the kind you see in law offices. It was bursting with color-coded tabs: neurology, physical therapy, speech, insurance, IEP meetings. David, my husband, had laughed when he first saw it. "Jesus, Eliza," he'd said, "it's your crazy person project." He thought it was a cute, obsessive hobby. But I knew what it was. It was Leo's lifeline. It was the binder I'd slam on the desk of an insurance rep who claimed a procedure wasn't covered with the highlighted proof that it was. It was the logbook I'd show a new doctor so he wouldn't waste 6 months re-diagnosing him. It was a full-time job. And it was only my first full-time job. By 6:15 a.m., I was David's unpaid admin. I fired up QuickBooks. My job, as I saw it, was to turn David's whirlwind of genius into something our accountant wouldn't throw back in our faces. He was the angel investor. He had the vision. I was the one who had to figure out how to pay for it. He'd come home and dump a handful of crumpled receipts from his Toomey wallet onto the counter. $400, client dinner. $180, travel. $1,200, new laptop. I was the magician who had to categorize them, scan them, and make sure his business expenses didn't trigger an IRS audit. He loved to tell people at parties, "Eliza doesn't work. She's a full-time mom." He'd say it with such genuine pride, as if mom was a cute part-time hobby, like scrapbooking or making artisanal bread. I'd just smile and nod, my hand wrapped around a club soda. I'd listen to him talk about vision and market disruption and scaling, and I'd be mentally calculating whether the Costco run I'd done that morning had left enough in the checking account for the quarterly property tax. "I couldn't do any of this without her," he'd say, patting my hand. And he was right. He just had no idea how right. Then there was my third job, the gala, the Save the Children's Hospital gala, the one he'd taken the mic at. I wasn't just on the committee, I was running the committee. For the last 6 months, from this very kitchen island, I had been the one negotiating the contract with the Marriott's catering manager. I was the one approving the AV team's load-in schedule. I was the one who designed the 500-person seating chart, a delicate game of political chess, placing donors and doctors and local egos in perfect, fragile harmony. David thought it was a sweet little project. He'd say, "It's good for you to have a hobby, honey. Keeps you busy." I was already on my second cup of coffee when Leo's alarm went off at 7. The house came to life. David emerged at 7:30, already on his phone, perfectly dressed, smelling of expensive cologne. He kissed my cheek, grabbed the smoothie I'd made for him, and ruffled Leo's hair. "Big day, champ?" "Big day, Eliza." "Big day," I'd reply, handing Leo his backpack. The afternoon was our time. No exceptions. We were on the floor of his room, working on his PT. My knees ached from the hardwood. The day's enemy was a set of 3 small wooden blocks. He was supposed to stack them. His hand trembled, his fine motor control betraying him. "I can't," he yelled, sweeping them to the floor. "It's stupid." I took a deep breath. "I know, sweetie. It's hard. But hard isn't stupid." I picked up the blocks. "You're the crane. I'm I don't know, the noisy construction guy who tells you where to put it. Beep, beep." He gave me a small, watery smile. "You're a weird construction guy. The weirdest." We sat there for 45 minutes. My back was cramping. My phone was buzzing with gala emails I was ignoring. 45 minutes of frustration, deep breaths, and tiny adjustments. Finally, one block balanced precariously on the other. A tower of two. He stared at it, then looked at me, his eyes wide. "I did it." "You did it." His little yes of victory was the only paycheck I needed. David came home at 7 p.m. He missed the battle. He missed the frustration. He missed the 45 minutes of failure. He just saw the 2 blocks, still standing on the rug. "Hey, good job, buddy," he said, ruffling Leo's hair. He looked at me. "Did you see the Tesla stock today, Eliza? We're killing it." He didn't see the work. He only saw the result. That was David's way. He lived on the highlight reel. I lived in the raw footage. That night, after I'd read Leo a story, after I'd confirmed the new keynote speaker for the gala, after I'd paid the landscaper, I sat down for the real work. The finances. David's investments were a jungle. He chased hot tips from guys at the golf club. My job was to make sure his gambles didn't sink the ship. I had all the passwords, the joint checking, the savings, the E-Trade account. And the most important one, the one that was my true north, Leo's future fund. This wasn't our rainy day fund. This was our monsoon fund. It was a high-yield savings account I had opened the day Leo was diagnosed, and we had made a solemn promise. This money was sacred. It was for the therapies he might need as an adult. It was for the surgeries we couldn't predict. It was for a future I was desperately trying to make safe for him. I checked it every month. Watching the balance grow, even by small amounts, was like a deep breath. So, I logged in, sipping my now cold tea. I was just doing my monthly check-in, expecting to see the usual balance, plus the $500 I'd transferred from checking last week. But the number was wrong. I blinked. I hit the refresh button on the browser. No, that couldn't be right. The number wasn't just wrong, it was $75,000 less than it should have been. A small, cold stone of dread dropped into my stomach. It had to be a bank error. I clicked on Transaction Activity. My heart was hammering, a cold, fast rhythm against my ribs. And that's when I saw it. A single line item from 2 days ago. Wire transfer, Act 901, to CR Holdings, LLC. I'd never heard of CR Holdings. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. Just a deep, sickening confusion. A bank error. It had to be. David would never. He would never touch that. Not Leo's fund. He wouldn't. I sat there, frozen, until my knees ached from being pressed against the desk drawer. He wouldn't. He wouldn't. My mind raced, building a dozen logical bridges over the canyon of dread that had just opened up. It was a mistake. It was a bank glitch. No, he'd moved it. That was it. He found a better high-yield account, one with a better interest rate. He was the investor, after all. He was always looking for the angle. He forgot to tell me. He's busy, I told myself. He's so busy. I must have sat there for an hour. The tea in my mug was ice cold, but I hadn't noticed. The kitchen was silent again, the numbers on the screen glowing with a kind of fluorescent, humming malice. $75,000. I knew that number by heart. It was the Phase 1 goal for Leo's fund. It was the projected cost of a specialized intensive therapy program in Boston we'd talked about. It was the down payment on a future where he could be independent. It was ours. It was his. I heard the garage door whir open at 10:30 p.m. He was late, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the jolt of pure, undiluted adrenaline that shot through me, making my numb hands tingle. I didn't move. I just sat at the kitchen island, my laptop still open, the screen a glowing accusation. I heard his keys hit the small glass bowl on the entry table, a heavy, familiar clack. "Eliza," he called out, his voice echoing in the foyer. "You up?" He walked into the kitchen, loosening his tie. He was still in his full suit, smelling of expensive steak and something else, a faint, floral perfume I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened, but I pushed the thought away. One crisis at a time. He smiled, that big, easy, master of the universe smile. Hey, rough night, the team at. He trailed off, finally noticing my expression. He saw the laptop. His smile didn't fade, but it hardened at the edges. What's wrong? He asked, but his tone was already defensive. I took a breath. I tried to keep my voice perfectly level. David, I was just reconciling the accounts for the month. Yeah? And he walked to the fridge, pulled out a bottle of sparkling water. The hiss as he opened it was violently loud in the silence. And, I said, I saw the transfer. He stopped, the bottle halfway to his lips. What transfer? The $75,000, I said, my voice barely a whisper, from Leo's future fund. I waited for the reaction I knew. The shock, the apology, the, oh my God, Eliza, let me explain. There was an emergency. I got none of it. He took a long, slow drink of water. Then he sighed, an annoyed, put-upon sound, as if I just reminded him to take out the trash. Oh, that, he said, waving his hand dismissively. I handled it. My blood went cold. You handled it? David, what is CR Holdings? He actually scoffed. He set the bottle down on the counter and looked at me, not like his wife, but like a junior employee who had just questioned his numbers in a meeting. Eliza, it's an investment, a can't-miss biotech startup. I got an early tip. The upside is, well, you wouldn't get the projections, but trust me, it's huge. We'll make that $75,000 back tenfold. I couldn't breathe. My brain was short-circuiting. You invested it? You invested Leo's surgery money? We promised, David. We said that account was sacred. I am the investor, remember, he said, his voice rising, the charm gone, replaced by cold steel. I'm the one who makes the money, Eliza. It's my money. I'm just moving it. I found a better place for it than some high-yield savings account that's barely keeping up with inflation. It's not your money, David. It's all my money, he snapped, stepping closer. The house, the cars, the money in that account. I make it, and I decide what happens to it. You just manage the spreadsheets. The insult hung in the air, sharp and ugly. All my work, Leo's binder, the gala, the non-stop, 24/7 job of being the COO of his life, all of it reduced to managing spreadsheets. He must have seen the look on my face, because his tone softened, but it was worse. It was the patronizing pat on the head. He reached out and touched my hair. I flinched. Look, he said, his voice all reasonable and calm. I know you like your little accounts. It's good you're organized, but you're in over your head on this one. This is the big leagues. This is how we get rich, Eliza, not by pinching pennies in a savings account. Don't worry your pretty head about it, okay? I've got this. Don't worry your pretty head about it. I just stared. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't grab the binder and hurl it at his head, though God, I wanted to. I just nodded. A small, submissive, wifely nod. Okay, David, I said. You're right. I'm just tired. The relief on his face was immediate. He'd handled me. The crisis was averted. He smiled, kissed my forehead, a dry, passionless press of his lips. That's my girl. Now I'm exhausted, going to bed. Don't stay up too late with those spreadsheets, okay? He turned and walked away, his expensive Italian loafers silent on the limestone floor. I stayed at the island, my back rigid, until I heard the click of our bedroom door shutting down the hall. Don't worry your pretty head about it. I looked back at the screen, at the glowing, mocking letters. CR Holdings, LLC. He thought I was just the bookkeeper. He forgot that the bookkeeper is the only one who knows exactly where every single body is buried. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. Not anymore. I opened a new browser tab. I opened the digital folder where I kept all our corporate and tax documents. I opened my spreadsheets. Okay, David, I whispered to the empty room. Let's see what the grown-ups are really doing. My fingers flew across the keyboard. He thought managing spreadsheets was a cute little hobby. He had no idea my spreadsheets were a fortress. I had a master Excel doc that would make a forensic accountant weep. It linked everything. Our Chase Sapphire rewards, the E-Trade account, Leo's 529 college fund, the mortgage, the Costco executive membership rebates. I tracked every penny. He thought I was the bookkeeper. He forgot the bookkeeper is the only one who knows exactly where all the bodies are buried. I started not with suspicion, but with process. CR Holdings, LLC. A new vendor. I needed to categorize it. I went to the Secretary of State's public business portal. I typed in the name, and there it was, filed 6 weeks ago. My stomach twisted. 6 weeks, right after I'd agreed to take over the gala planning, freeing up all of David's nights. The registered agent was listed as C. Reynolds. The address was a P.O. box at a UPS store downtown. Anonymous. C. Reynolds. It was still just a name. Maybe it was a biotech guy. Maybe C stood for Charles or Chris. I went back to my master spreadsheet. I opened the tab for the Chase Sapphire card. David used this card for business, the one I was supposed to just pay off every month without question. I ran a search. C. Reynolds. Bingo. My blood didn't run cold. It felt hot, and it all rushed to my head, making my ears ring. It wasn't a $75,000 charge. That was the wire transfer. This was different. This was the setup. A charge from 2 months ago. $5,000. The memo line, entered by the vendor, professional services retainer. Another one, 3 weeks ago. $2,500. Memo, consulting. He had been paying this C. Reynolds for months before he drained Leo's account. This wasn't an investment tip. This was a plan. The house was so quiet. All I could hear was the thump, thump, thump of my own heart. I thought about him walking in, the smell of that perfume, the late nights. My mind went to a place I had sworn it would never go, the place where that kind of wife lives, the suspicious, snooping wife I'd always found so pathetic. But this wasn't snooping. This was an audit. I logged into our Verizon family plan. I was the account manager. I paid the bill. I had my excuse ready, even if it was just for myself. I was just checking the data usage. Leo had been watching a lot of YouTube on his iPad, and I was worried about overages. It was a perfectly reasonable mom thing to do. I clicked on my usage. I looked at David's line, and my world tilted. It wasn't the data. It was the text log. One number, not hundreds of texts, thousands. My eyes scanned the call log. Calls at 10 p.m., 11:30 p.m., 7 a.m. A 2-hour call on a Saturday afternoon when he'd gone to the driving range. I didn't recognize the number. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely copy-paste it. I opened the iCloud family calendar, the one I lived by. The one I used to schedule Leo's PT, PTA meetings, and David's important client dinners. I pasted the phone number into the search bar. No results. Of course not. Too easy. I went back to the Chase statement. C. Reynolds. I typed CR into the calendar search. The screen lit up. Dozens of entries, all color-coded red, his do not disturb work color. But the titles, which synced from his assistant's entries, weren't private. 3 months ago, dinner, Claire R. location, the Capitol Grill. He'd told me he was stuck at the office with the partners. 2 months ago, late strategy Moot G, CR location, her office. This was the night he missed Leo's spring concert at school. 6 weeks ago, finalize venture Claire, location, the Street Regis. The Street Regis. My breath hitched. That's not an office building. That's a hotel, the one with the famously expensive bar. And rooms. Claire. Claire R. C. Reynolds. I knew that name. My mind was scrambling. The firm's Christmas party. Last year, I'd been stuck talking to the junior partners, and David had been occupied. He'd spent 30 minutes talking to a tall blonde woman in a stunning, backless red dress. He'd introduced us, briefly. Eliza, this is Claire Reynolds, our new legal eagle, chief ethics officer, she'd corrected him, her smile all teeth. I'm the one who keeps him out of trouble. My God, she wasn't just a lawyer at his VC firm, she was the lawyer. The woman they'd hired to give lectures on corporate responsibility and fiduciary duty. The woman who was supposed to be the moral compass. The perfume, the floral, expensive scent. It was hers, the $5,000 retainer on the credit card. the strategy meeting at the Street Regis, the thousands of late-night texts, and finally, the $75,000, our son's money, wired into an LLC, registered in her name. I stumbled out of the kitchen chair and made it to the powder room just in time. I heaved, but there was nothing in my stomach, just the acidic, burning taste of betrayal. This wasn't just an affair. A simple affair is pathetic. It's weak. This was a conspiracy. This was grand larceny, wrapped in infidelity, planned by an ethics lawyer. I looked at myself in the gilded mirror. My face was pale, my eyes wide and dark. He had told me not to worry my pretty head about it. He had told me I just managed the spreadsheets. A cold, quiet calm settled over me. He was right. I do manage the spreadsheets, and this spreadsheet was telling me a story he never, ever wanted me to read. I went back to the kitchen, washed my face with cold water, and sat down at my laptop. The fragile wife was gone. The hobbyist gala planner was gone. In her place was the only person who had all the passwords, the only one who knew the whole truth, the bookkeeper. And it was time to balance the books. Balancing the books was my new mantra. It was 3 a.m. The house was a tomb. I wasn't a wife. I was an auditor. And the first rule of an audit is to follow the money until it tells you the why. Why CR Holdings? Why $75,000? David had called it a biotech startup. The word biotech snagged in my brain. It felt wrong. David doesn't know a thing about biotech. He's a software and finance guy. He likes apps. He likes digital platforms. He likes things he can scale from his laptop while drinking bourbon. Biotech is slow. It's messy. It's patents, and R&D, and FDA approvals. It's science. I said the word science out loud to the empty kitchen, and the small sound seemed to hang in the air. And in that silence, a new, terrible memory surfaced. My blood, which had been cold, now felt like it was turning to sludge. Science. My father is the scientist. My dad, he's a retired biomedical engineer from 3M, a classic garage tinkerer genius. He's the kind of man who reads fluid dynamics textbooks for fun. Since he retired, he's been spending 60 hours a week in his workshop on the project. I closed my eyes, and I was instantly back at Thanksgiving. The whole family was there, the smell of turkey and my mom's sage stuffing. After dinner, Dad had pulled me into his workshop, his hands practically vibrating with an excitement I hadn't seen in him since I was a kid. "Eliza, honey, this is it," he'd said, his voice thick. "This is the one." He unrolled a set of blueprints on his workbench. It was a device, a small, brilliant, ingenious device. It was a non-invasive monitor for dialysis patients, one that could check blood toxicity in real time, at home. "It'll save lives, Eliza," he'd said, his eyes shining. "It'll let people live. But the patent process, the VCs, they're sharks, honey. I'm an old man. I don't know who to trust." I remembered the exact words I said. I remembered the feeling of pride, of helpfulness, as I said them. I put my hand on his, the skin thin and papery, speckled with age. "Dad, you have to talk to David," I'd said, my voice full of that wifely, daughterly confidence. "He knows this world. He can protect you. He can help you get it funded, find the right partners. Let him help, Dad. He's family." My own words, he's family. I stood up from the kitchen island, a wave of nausea so profound I had to grip the counter. I was the one. I was the key. I was the one who had personally walked the wolf into the sheep pen and vouched for him. I ran from the kitchen, not to our bedroom, but to David's home office. Not the joint one we shared, the one with the iMac I used for the gala planning. This was his private study. The one with the leather-bound books he'd never read, and the expensive whiskey decanter he used to impress people. The one he called his sanctuary. It smelled like him. That sharp cedar and leather cologne and the faint, stale tang of alcohol. He wasn't a good hider. Why would he be? He was arrogant. His pretty-headed wife was asleep, and his hobby was spreadsheets. It was right on his desk, in a handsome, embossed blue folder, the kind you get at Staples for a high-stakes presentation. The label, printed on his Dymo label maker, was clean and bold. CR Holdings, Pitch Deck Confidential. My hand didn't tremble. That part of me was gone. I opened it. It was a full-blown investor pitch deck, 30 slides. The About Us page listed David as founder and CEO and Claire Reynolds as chief legal officer and partner. The product page. I took the folder back to the kitchen. My movements were slow, precise. I sat down at my 27-inch monitor. I opened my email. I searched my inbox. Dad, patent. There it was, from 11 months ago. Just for your safekeeping, honey. Love, Dad. I opened his PDF. I opened the scanned image of the pitch deck. I dragged them side by side on my screen. It wasn't similar. It was identical. They had copied his technical diagrams. They had plagiarized his projections on market share. They had lifted his go-to-market strategy slide verbatim. They had taken my father's words, his diagrams, his soul, and just typed their own names at the top. It was theft. Clean, simple, and utterly sociopathic. And then I saw it. The last slide in the pitch deck. The one that tied the noose. Financials. Seed round. Friends and family. Status. $75,000 secured. C. R. Holdings. LLC. This was the moment the world fractured. The affair. That was a betrayal of our marriage. Stealing Leo's money. That was monstrous. But this was the why. This was the final devastating piece of the puzzle. They didn't just steal from my son. They stole from my father, and they used my son's medical fund to finance the theft of my father's life's work. It was a closed loop of predation. They were strip mining my entire family, starting with the most vulnerable and ending with the most brilliant. And I was the one who'd given them the map. I closed the laptop. The quiet, satisfying click of the magnetic lid was the sound of a door slamming shut on the woman I used to be, the fragile wife who cried, the naive mom who believed in family. David didn't just underestimate me, he'd mistaken me for a fool. He'd forgotten who had built the spreadsheets, he'd forgotten who had all the passwords, and he'd forgotten that I am, above all, my father's daughter. He wanted a war? He was about to get one, but I wasn't going to fight him on his territory, the territory of loud voices and golf club bravado. I was going to fight him on mine. The audit wasn't over. It was just beginning. My audit began not with a bang, but with a click. The click of my mouse, opening the gala's master contact list. My war wasn't going to be fought in our limestone kitchen or our king-sized silent-as-a-tomb bedroom. David wanted the big leagues. Fine, I'd go straight to the top. Claire Reynolds, Chief Ethics Officer, an employee. She had a boss. His name was Mr. Harrison, Senior Managing Partner at one of the oldest, wealthiest law firms in the state. And, as luck or perhaps my own meticulous planning would have it, his firm was the new platinum sponsor for the Children's Hospital Gala. David had insisted I court them. "Get Harrison on the board, Eliza," he'd said. "It's all about access." He was right. It is all about access. I didn't call his office as Eliza Miller, hysterical wife. I didn't dial from my personal cell. I went to my gala planning desk, used the official hospital letterhead, and sent an email from my gala chair address. "Dear Mr. Harrison," I typed, "thank you again for your generous platinum sponsorship. As we finalize the program, I was hoping to stop by for a brief 15-minute meeting to discuss your preferences for the program feature and, separately, to ask your advice on a delicate matter that has come to my attention regarding the hospital's reputation." His assistant replied in under 10 minutes. "Mr. Harrison can see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Of course he could. The magic words were reputation and hospital. The next afternoon, I put on the suit I used to wear in my old life, before Leo, before David's vision took over. A sharp, charcoal gray sheath dress and sensible, powerful heels. I wasn't a mom today. I wasn't David's pretty-headed wife. I was the chair of the Children's Hospital Gala. And I was about to be a very, very concerned donor. The firm's lobby was a cathedral of imported marble and dark mahogany, designed to intimidate. It smelled of old money and floor wax. I was led into an office that was bigger than my first apartment. Mr. Harrison was exactly what you'd expect. Silver hair, a suit that probably cost more than my car, and a view that looked down on the entire city. "Mrs. Miller," he said, not standing. He gestured to a leather chair that was clearly designed to make you feel small. "A pleasure. What can I do for you?" "Mr. Harrison," I said, my voice calm and even. I slid a folder onto his desk. "This is the gala program's ad buy. I wanted your personal approval on the firm's placement." He blinked, surprised. He took it, glanced at it. "This is fine. Wonderful." I leaned forward, my hands clasped on my lap. "I'm so glad we could get that settled." I let the silence hang for a beat. Then I changed my entire posture. I was no longer the gala chair. I was a problem solver. As I said in my email, I'm also here about a second, more delicate matter. "Ah, yes," he said, leaning back. "The reputation issue." He looked bored, like this was some PTA squabble. "Is one of the doctors misbehaving?" "In a way," I said. "It's about a potential very serious liability, not just to the hospital, but to this firm." His eyes sharpened. The boredom vanished. I had his full attention. "I am, as my husband often says, just a bookkeeper," I began. "I manage my family's finances. My son Leo has significant medical needs, and we maintain a private trust for his future. 2 nights ago, I discovered an irregularity. A $75,000 wire transfer from that trust, made without my knowledge." Mr. Harrison's face remained a polite professional mask. "Mrs. Miller, while that is unfortunate, I don't see what that has to do with—" "It was wired to a new LLC," I said, cutting him off. And from my purse, I pulled a second binder. This wasn't Leo's chaotic 5-inch mom binder. This one was slim, black, and professional. It was my war binder. I opened it and slid the first page across his vast, polished desk. A company called CR Holdings LLC, filed 6 weeks ago. I slid over the second page, and this is the LLC filing from the Secretary of State's website, the registered agent and sole officer, C. Reynolds. I let him read it. I watched the muscle in his jaw flicker. He knew that name. "And here," I said, sliding over the third document, "is the wire transfer from our son's trust account to that LLC. This is a private family matter, Mrs. Miller," he said, his voice now dangerously low. "It was," I agreed, "until I found out what that LLC was for." I slid over the final damning pages, the side-by-side comparison. On the left, my father's copyrighted blueprints for his medical device. On the right, the CR Holdings pitch deck, with his diagrams, his data, his words, under a new logo. "This," I said, my voice cold as ice, "is my father's intellectual property, a non-invasive dialysis monitor he has been developing for 10 years. And this," I tapped the pitch deck, "is the biotech venture that CR Holdings is currently shopping to investors." Mr. Harrison stared at the papers. He wasn't looking at me. He was reading, his eyes scanning, the speed of his comprehension terrifying. He was putting it all together. The theft, the fraud, the everything. "Mrs. Miller," he said, his voice a rasp. "Why are you here?" "Why not? The police." This was the moment, the pivot. I looked him straight in the eye. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I did not mention the affair. I didn't have to. The affair was amateur hour. This was a felony. Because Mr. Harrison, the co-founder of this new venture, the one who filed the LLC, the one listed here as Chief Legal Officer. I tapped Claire's name on the pitch deck. "Is your firm's Chief Ethics Officer?" He looked like I had physically slapped him. "I am here, Mr. Harrison, because I don't know the scope of this." I lied, beautifully. "I don't know if Miss Reynolds is acting alone or if this is a firm venture." I thought, as the man whose name is on the wall, you would want to know if your chief ethics officer was actively using, shall we say, firm resources to orchestrate the theft of intellectual property and the fraudulent transfer of funds from a disabled child's trust fund, especially when that child and that family are the face of the very gala your firm is sponsoring. Checkmate. The silence in the room was absolute. I watched him. He wasn't seeing me, the pretty-headed wife. He was seeing lawsuits. He was seeing the hospital board. He was seeing the front page of the Wall Street Journal. He was seeing an ethics complaint that could disbar not just Claire, but him, for failure to supervise. He stood up. He walked to the window, his back to me, for a full minute. I didn't move. I just waited. Finally, he turned around. The polite mask was gone. His face was granite. "Mrs. Miller," he said, in a voice that could freeze fire, "this is an egregious breach of our bylaws, an internal matter of the highest order." He walked back to his desk. He stacked the papers I had given him into a neat pile and slid them into his personal desk drawer. "Thank you for bringing this clerical error to my attention. You can be assured that I will handle this personally." I stood up. I smoothed my dress. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Harrison. I knew I could count on you. I'll see you at the gala." I walked out of his office, past the terrified-looking assistant, and into the marble lobby. I didn't let myself breathe until the elevator doors closed. My hands were shaking. I hadn't just found an ally. I had just handed a weapon to the only other person in the city who had more to lose from this than I did. The fuse was lit. A lit fuse is a quiet thing. It doesn't make any noise. It just burns. And for the next 2 months, my entire life was about managing that quiet, burning, invisible fuse. I went home from Mr. Harrison's skyscraper, took off my charcoal gray warrior suit, and put my mom uniform back on, Lululemon leggings, and an old, faded university sweatshirt. I went back to being the pretty-headed wife. In fact, I became the best version of her. I became a ghost. A smiling, helpful, completely accommodating ghost. I made David's favorite meals. I laughed at his jokes. I listened with rapt attention as he talked about his big days. And I spent every second with Leo, soaking in his innocence, his laughter, his frustrated but triumphant "I did it" when he stacked his blocks. I was banking his love like fuel. It was sickening and fascinating, like watching a nature documentary about a predator who thinks it's completely invisible. Now that I knew everything, I saw the tells everywhere. The way he'd start meetings for his new venture at our house, he and Claire, they were brazen. They'd sit at my kitchen island, the one where I logged Leo's medical data with their laptops open, talking about projections and patent timelines. Claire would sip my Nespresso from my favorite world's best mom mug and look at me with a kind of bland, dismissive pity, as if I were the domestic help, scurrying around in the background. "Oh, Eliza, hi," she'd say, her voice all business, not even looking up from her screen as I walked in from Leo's school pickup. "David, as I was saying, the Series A funding is contingent on." I'd just smile. "Can I get you anything, Claire?" "Another coffee." "Eliza, sweetheart, we're in the middle of something," David would say, annoyed at the interruption. "We're trying to work, can't you?" "I don't know, take Leo to the park." "Of course," I'd say, my voice as sweet and smooth as honey. "You two work. It's so important." And I'd hand her a fresh Nespresso pod, my hand perfectly steady, while in my head I was counting down the days. I'd emailed Mr. Harrison once since our meeting. "Just checking in," I'd written. His reply was one word: patience. So I was patient. I was the most patient, accommodating, invisible wife on the planet. David, meanwhile, was high on a drug I'd never seen before, a mix of adrenaline, greed, and pure, uncut arrogance. He was electric with it. He'd pace the house on his phone, talking loudly to investors I'd never heard of. "It's a lock." He'd boom into his AirPods. "We've got the tech, we've got the legal, and we're just weeks away from a 9-figure valuation." He'd hang up, see me at my laptop juggling the gala's catering invoices, and he'd laugh. "God, you're a lifesaver, Eliza," he said one night, walking up behind me. He put his hands on my shoulders and started to rub them. I had to fight every instinct to not recoil. He patted my head. Literally, patted my head like I was a golden retriever who had just fetched a ball. "It's so good you have this," he said, gesturing to my screen, which was a complex, color-coded grid managing 500 guests, a 12-person vendor team, and a $100,000 budget. "It's good for you to have a hobby. Keep your mind off the big stuff." He looked at my screen, at the very weapon I was building to destroy him, and called it cute. "You're so focused on your little spreadsheets," he'd coo. "It's adorable." The big stuff, as he called it, was all he could talk about. About 2 weeks before the gala, he came into my home office. I was on a call with the AV team, but I muted it. "Hey, I need a favor," he said. "No, hello. No, how are you? Just, I need." "What's up?" I said, all smiles. "I need you to add someone to the VIP table," he said. I pretended to check my list, my little spreadsheet. David, that table is full. It's the hospital board, the mayor, Mr. Harrison and his wife, the platinum sponsors. Exactly, he said, which is why Claire needs to be there. I looked up, my face a perfect mask of confused innocence. Claire, our lawyer? David, she's not a donor. I have her seated at table 12 with the firm's junior partners. His face darkened. That easy charm evaporated in a split second. Eliza, don't be difficult. This is important. This gala. It's the perfect place to announce the new venture. It's a charity event. It's for the hospital. It's the perfect PR. Claire has been instrumental to this whole thing. She's my partner, Eliza. She needs to be at the front table. Make it happen. He was daring me to say no. He was so confident in his power over me, so sure of my weakness, that he was demanding I set a place for his mistress and his co-conspirator at the table of honor. At my event. It was the ultimate flex, the ultimate act of disrespect. He was rubbing my face in it and daring me to complain. I let the silence stretch for a beat. Then, I smiled. A sweet, accommodating, Stepford smile. You're right, honey, of course. Anything to help your venture. It's just, the chief of surgery was at that seat, but I'm sure he won't mind moving. You're right. It's important. The relief on his face was disgusting. He had handled me again. See? Was that so hard? He said, the charm flooding back. He kissed my forehead. You're the best, Eliza. Truly. This is why we work. You're my rock. Always, I said. He walked out, and I unmuted the phone. Sorry about that, Mike, I said to the AV tech. Now back to the presentation. The tech on the other end sounded tired. No problem, ma'am. So, you're confirming the order of speakers? We have you, then your husband, then the keynote. That's right, I said, pulling up my other spreadsheet. The one he'd never seen. The one titled Gala, Final Presentation. And you're sure about the special AVQ? Mike asked. You want a manual switch, not an automatic one? Most people just want it to autoplay. I looked at the slide I was working on. It was simple, clean, and utterly devastating. A side-by-side comparison. My father's blueprints on the left. The CR Holdings pitch deck on the right. Absolutely, I said, my voice perfectly calm. I need the clicker in my hand to control all the slides, especially slide 24. It's a surprise. A special thank you to one of our partners. I need to be the only one who can advance the presentation at that moment. Got it, Mike said. A surprise. No problem. We'll lock it to your remote. Only you can advance. Thank you, Mike, I said. You have no idea how important this is. I hung up. I pulled up the seating chart. I moved the chief of surgery. Then, I highlighted Claire's name in a bright warning sign yellow. I put her right next to David, and on her other side, I put Mr. Harrison. Perfect, I thought. A little family dinner. I went to my closet and looked at the dress I'd bought for the gala months ago. A simple, elegant beige dress. The kind of dress that's designed to fade into the background. I looked at it for a long time. Then I took it, put it in a bag for Goodwill, and went online. I ordered a new one, in brilliant, unapologetic look-at-me red. The night of the gala, the zipper on the red dress felt like it was sealing me into a suit of armor. It was a stark, unapologetic crimson, the kind of red that doesn't ask for permission, the kind that refuses to be invisible. When I walked down the grand staircase, David, adjusting his custom-made bow tie in the foyer mirror, actually stopped. His eyes did a quick, appreciative sweep, the kind he usually reserved for a new sports car. Wow, he said, and for a second, I thought he'd seen me. But then he added, That's a lot of dress, Eliza, trying to upstage the keynote. It's a big night, I said, my voice perfectly smooth. I picked up my clutch. The small, cold weight of the clicker was inside. I want to make you proud. He smiled, satisfied. That's my girl. The ballroom at the Marriott was a sea of black ties and sequins. It was exactly as I'd planned it. 200 tables, 500 guests, and the air thick with the scent of money, lilies, and expensive perfume. For the first hour, I was a ghost in my own machine. I was the perfect hostess, the gala chair, the wife of. I smiled. I shook hands with the mayor. I kissed the chief of surgery, the one I'd bumped from the VIP table on the cheek, and thanked him for his gracious flexibility. I was Eliza, the organizer, the hobbyist. Every clink of a glass, every burst of manufactured laughter, every time a donor's name was mentioned, I had orchestrated all of it from my kitchen island. And then I saw them, my VIP table, the one I had set with such care. It was a masterpiece of social warfare. David was in his element, holding court, a glass of bourbon in his hand. He was a king in his small, glittering kingdom. And at his right hand, the place of honor I had personally assigned her, was Claire. She was wearing a sleek, liquid silver dress, cold, like a surgical instrument. She was laughing at something David had said, her hand resting just a little too long on his arm. And on her other side, the buffer I had so carefully installed was Mr. Harrison, stone-faced. He looked utterly bored, but I knew better. I'd seen him in his office. He was a shark, circling, waiting for the first drop of blood. He made brief, icy polite conversation with Claire, who seemed to be trying to charm him. She had no idea she was sitting next to her executioner. My executioner. As I did my final walkthrough, checking on the audio-visual booth, David caught my eye. He waved me over, a big, performative, "come here, darling" gesture for the whole table. I smiled and walked over. He put his arm around my waist, pulling me in tight, claiming me. "Isn't she amazing?" he said to the table. To Claire, to Harrison. She put all of this together, all of it. He kissed my temple. It felt like a spider. "It's so great you had this little hobby, honey," he said, his voice dripping with condescension that only the two of us and maybe Harrison could hear. "You did a great job, A+, really." He was praising my work, while sitting next to the woman he was using to destroy my family. The sheer, breathtaking arrogance of it almost made me laugh. I just smiled. "I'm so glad you're happy, darling." The dinner courses came and went. The lights dimmed. The hospital's PR video played the one I'd spent a month editing, the one that made 3 donors cry. Then, it was time. The MC, a local news anchor, read from the card I'd written. "And now, please welcome the woman who made this all possible, our incredible gala chair, Eliza Miller." The spotlight hit me. I felt the heat of it on my face, a tiny, fake sun. I walked up the steps, my heels clicking, the red of my dress a moving target. The clicker was small and cold in my palm. 500 faces looked at me. I saw my dad in the 3rd row, beaming with pride. I saw Leo's neurologist. I saw Mr. Harrison, his face a perfect, unreadable mask. I smiled. I took my place at the podium. The light was blinding. "Good evening," I began. "For 6 months we have all worked toward this." But I didn't get any further, because David was already standing up. He was walking onto the stage. I saw the AV tech mic look confused, his hand hovering over his console. The room applauded. Of course they did. The charismatic angel investor coming to support his nervous wife. He walked right up to me, smiled that smile, the one for the cameras, the one for the investors, and he took the microphone, right out of my hand. He didn't ask. He just took it. He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear, the smell of his bourbon and cologne washing over me. The mic was live, but he was whispering, just for me. "The investors are here, darling," he hissed, his voice a cold, sharp blade. "You're in over your head. Let the grown-ups handle it." My blood didn't run cold. It didn't boil. It just stopped. This was it. The final, public, breathtaking insult. He thought I was just the decor. He turned to the crowd, his arm still around my waist, pinning me to his side like a trophy he'd won. "My wife," he boomed, his voice filling the room, "as you all know, has the biggest heart in this city. She poured her soul into this. But I'm the one with the business sense." The room chuckled. He was charming them. "And tonight," he continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, excited tone, "in the spirit of this hospital, in the spirit of innovation, I have a very special announcement. We are on the verge of launching a new venture." He was doing it. He was going to announce my father's invention using my stage, my microphone, at my event. I looked at Claire. She was glowing, her face triumphant, like she'd just won an Oscar. I looked at Harrison. His eyes were fixed on me. I let David talk for another 10 seconds. I let him dig the hole a little deeper, let him talk about vision and next-gen tech. Then, I leaned toward the podium's backup mic, the one he'd ignored. My voice was quiet, but the system was hot. It cut through the room, sharp as glass. "David, darling." He stopped, mid-sentence. He looked at me, pure annoyance flashing in his eyes. "You're right," I said, my voice suddenly clear and ringing, filling the vast, silent ballroom. "I am in over your head." The room went so quiet you could hear an ice cube melt. David's smile froze. It became a rictus. "What?" he whispered, but the mic picked it up perfectly. I smiled at him. My first real smile of the night. "In fact," I said, addressing the 500 guests, "I seem to have made a mistake on the presentation. Silly me." I held up the clicker. "Let me just back up." And I pointed it at the giant 20-foot screen behind his head. The screen that said, "Thank you to our donors." And I clicked. The click echoed, a tiny sharp snap in the vast, silent ballroom. The "thank you to our donors" slide vanished. For one agonizing second, the 20-foot screen behind David's head was a black void, sucking all the light and air out of the room. Then, the new slide snapped into view. It wasn't a logo, it wasn't a graph, it was a cold, sterile, undeniable screenshot from a Chase bank account. The image was so big, so clear, that the 500 people in the room could read every line. My pretty-headed spreadsheet was now a billboard. A single red arrow, which I had carefully added in Photoshop, pointed to one transaction. Wire transfer. $75,000 from Leo Miller Future Fund to CR Holdings, LLC. David was still squinting, his brain not catching up. He thought it was a technical glitch, a mistake, my incompetence on public display. "Eliza," he hissed, the smile frozen on his face, a rictus of terror. "What is this? Get it off the screen, now." "I'm so sorry, everyone," I said, my voice ringing with a new, terrible clarity. It didn't tremble, it boomed. "My apologies, I'm just so bad with technology. This must be from my spreadsheets." I turned from him and spoke directly to the room. To the doctors, to the investors, to the mayor. "My husband just mentioned his new venture," I said, my voice calm, conversational. This is the seed money." A wave of sound rippled through the room, a gasp, 100 murmured, "What's?" I saw my father, in the third row, his hand gripping my mother's arm. He was looking at the name of the fund, Leo's Fund. His face was a mask of gray, dawning horror. I looked at the VIP table. Claire Reynolds had gone so white she blended in with the tablecloth. She wasn't looking at me. She wasn't looking at David. She was staring, hypnotized, at Mr. Harrison, and Mr. Harrison was looking right at me. His face was granite, not a flicker of surprise. He just nodded. Once. "Eliza, you bitch!" David spat, the whisper so venomous it almost singed my hair. He lunged for the podium, for my hand, for the clicker. He was going to shut it down, wrestle me off the stage. But he underestimated me. Again. He forgot I'm a mom. I've spent 8 years developing the reflexes to stop a 30-pound toddler from grabbing a bottle of bleach. He was slow. I simply took one step back, out of his reach, and I clicked the button again. The bank statement vanished. The new slide snapped into place. My war slide. It was a clean, simple, side-by-side comparison, the kind you see in a corporate presentation. On the left, under the heading, "The Invention," submitted 11 months ago, was a high-resolution scan of my father's original, hand-annotated blueprint for his dialysis monitor. His careful, old-school engineer's handwriting was visible. His signature was in the bottom right corner. On the right, under the heading, "The Venture Filed 6 weeks ago," was a crisp screenshot of the CR Holdings pitch deck, the one from David's office, the one with his name and Claire's name on it. It wasn't similar. It was a photocopy. They had stolen his diagrams, his projections, his life's work. This time, the sound from the crowd wasn't a gasp. It was a groan. A single, unified, disgusted sound. David just stopped. He froze, his hand still outstretched, a statue of a man caught in the very act of theft. He stared at the screen, his mouth open, no sound coming out. He finally understood. The pretty-headed wife. The little hobbyist. The bookkeeper. She had all the receipts, and she had put them on a 20-foot screen. I stepped back to the microphone, my voice finally breaking. Not with tears, but with a cold, hard, righteous rage. "My husband," I said, "asked me to support his new venture." I pointed to the screen, to the two identical diagrams. It seems this venture was stealing my father's invention. I turned and looked at him. At the man who had taken the mic from my hand, at the man who had patted me on the head, at the man who had called me adorable, and funding it. I finished, my voice dropping, but every person in that silent, cavernous room heard me. "With our disabled son's medical fund." The words "our son's medical fund" just hung there in the air, echoing in the dead, suffocating silence. No one moved, no one clapped, no one coughed. For a full 10 seconds, 500 people were frozen in a collective, horrified, silent stare. The only light in the entire ballroom was from the 20-foot screen behind us, which was still glowing with the side-by-side evidence of his crime. The light illuminated David's face, which had gone a slick, pale greenish white. He looked like a man who'd been stabbed in the back and was just now realizing the knife was there. He was still on my stage, at my gala, but he was gone. Then, a sound. From the front VIP table, a single, sharp, deliberate scrape of a wooden chair leg against the polished floor. In that crushing, tomb-like silence, it sounded like a gunshot. Every head in the room, including mine, swiveled. Mr. Harrison, the senior managing partner, was on his feet. He calmly, methodically, placed his white linen napkin down on the table beside his untouched dessert. He didn't throw it. He placed it. He adjusted the lapels of his tuxedo jacket. I saw Claire's head snap toward him, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. Her mouth opened, a small, choked, "Oh no," sound escaped. But Mr. Harrison didn't even look at her. He looked at me. He started walking. He didn't rush. He moved with the slow, deliberate, terrifying confidence of a man who owned the building, and everyone in it. He walked up the side stairs to the stage. David saw him coming and seemed to shrink, stumbling back a step. He was a ghost in a tuxedo. Mr. Harrison didn't look at David. He didn't look at the screen. He walked directly to the podium, right to my side. He stopped, and he just waited. He didn't grab for the mic. He didn't interrupt. He simply stood there, his silver hair immaculate under the hot lights, and held his hand out, palm up, a silent, respectful request. David took the microphone from me. Mr. Harrison asked for it. That one small gesture was everything. It was the entire story. It was the pivot on which my entire life turned. I was no longer the pretty-headed wife. I was a witness. I was an ally. My hand was perfectly steady as I picked up the microphone David had stolen from me, and I placed it, firmly, into Mr. Harrison's open hand. He nodded, once. A sharp, respectful, "Thank you." Then he turned to the room. His voice didn't boom. It didn't need to. It sliced. "Good evening," he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a diamond. "On behalf of the firm of Harrison, Kroll, and Spencer." He paused, and for the first time, his eyes swept the VIP table and landed on Claire. She looked like she was trying to physically crawl inside her silver dress. "I would like to announce that, effective immediately, Miss Claire Reynolds is no longer an employee of our firm. Her services are terminated." A sound tore from Claire's throat. Not a word, but a high-pitched, animal-like wail of pure horror. "Charles!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Charles, you can't!" "We." "David." Mr. Harrison didn't flinch. He didn't even look at her. Two large men in black suits, the hotel security I had put on retainer for the event, were already moving, silently and quickly, toward her table. Harrison turned his gaze to the third row, where my father was sitting, his face ashen, my mother weeping silently into his shoulder. Furthermore, Mr. Harrison's voice was a gavel. "Our firm will be in immediate contact with Mr. Eliza's father. We will be fully cooperating to ensure that his invention," he hit the word "his" with the force of a hammer, "receives the full legal protection, and if he so chooses, the legitimate backing it so clearly deserves. Our firm will be making a substantial, personal donation to the Children's Hospital to apologize for this. Oversight. Oversight, that's what he called it. The brutal, beautiful corporate screw you. He had just, in less than 30 seconds, professionally and publicly executed his own chief ethics officer and, by extension, her founder and CEO. The security guards had reached Claire. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," one of them said, his voice a low rumble. "No." She was sobbing now, a hysterical, ugly sound, mascara running down her face. "David, David, tell them, David." She was calling for him. And David. David was still standing 2 feet away from me, a man made of ash. He just stared at her, his mouth open, as she was escorted, struggling and wailing, out of the ballroom. The heavy doors swung shut, cutting off her sobs. The room was silent again. Mr. Harrison looked at the stunned, silent crowd. He looked at me. He handed the microphone back to me. He nodded once, turned, and walked off the stage, leaving just the two of us, me and David, alone, trapped together in the single, bright, unforgiving spotlight, with the 2 0-foot-high receipts for his soul glowing behind us. He had no one. He had nothing. He was left on the stage with the grown-up he'd never even seen. David was left alone on that stage, a man made of ash, trapped in the harsh, unforgiving spotlight, with the 2 0-foot-high receipts for his soul glowing behind his head. I didn't stay to watch him walk off. I'd seen enough. While the entire ballroom was still frozen, a living oil painting of 500 shocked faces, I turned. I walked down the steps, my red dress a defiant slash of color in the dark, and I didn't stumble. My heels were silent on the thick carpet as I walked past the VIP table. I didn't look at the empty chair where Claire had been, or the half-eaten dessert, or the napkin mister. Harrison had left, folded, like a tombstone. I walked straight to the 3rd row. I stopped in front of my father. He was staring at the stage, his face gray, his hands shaking. My mother was weeping silently into his shoulder. I put my hand on his. He flinched, then gripped my hand like a lifeline. "Let's go home, Dad," I said. My voice wasn't a whisper. It was a command. And we did. We stood up, the 3 of us, and we walked out of the gala I had spent 6 months building. We walked past the mayor, past the doctors, past the stunned investors. I didn't look back once. The click of the heavy ballroom doors shutting behind us was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. The aftermath wasn't a slow burn. It was a detonation. Mr. Harrison was, as I'd suspected, a man who hated liability more than he loved money. By 9 a.m. the next morning, his firm had filed an injunction on behalf of my father, freezing the CR Holdings LLC and every asset associated with it. The divorce was quiet, clinical. What was there to fight about? I had the slides. I had the binder. I had the receipts, literally. David's lawyers, faced with my war binder, which now contained not just the financials but a signed affidavit from Mr. Harrison, told him to sign. He signed. He wasn't just bankrupted by the divorce. He was bankrupted by the lawsuits. First, my father's, for intellectual property theft. Then, 2 other investors he'd conned with his can't-miss biotech venture. He was a pariah. His name was a curse at every golf club and steakhouse in the city. He lost the house, he lost his car, he lost his reputation. I heard he moved back to his hometown in Ohio, a visionary with no one left to con. And Claire? The State Bar Association is not known for its sense of humor. Chief ethics officer orchestrating a theft. It was an open and shut case. She was disbarred. Permanently. That was 6 months ago. Today, I'm standing in another room, facing another high-stakes crowd. But this room is different. It's not a ballroom. It's a boardroom. The walls are floor-to-ceiling glass, overlooking the entire city skyline. And I'm not wearing a red dress. I'm wearing a navy blue suit that I paid for myself. At the head of the polished 20-foot mahogany table, there's a small, elegant brass plaque. It doesn't say gala chair. It says, Eliza Miller, Chief Executive Officer. Welcome to Miller Medical. We took the holdings out. It felt more honest. I'm at the head of the table. And to my right, where my partner should be, sits my father. He's not just Dad in here. He's Dr. Miller, our chief engineer. He's got a new sparkle in his eye, a set of new blueprints rolled out in front of him, and he's happily arguing with a man in a $5,000 suit. And the man he's arguing with? It's Mr. Harrison. He's not just our lawyer, he's our first investor. He's the one who, after the dust from the gala had settled, took me to lunch. He'd looked at my war binder, which I'd brought as a precaution. He'd flipped through the color-coded tabs, the spreadsheets, the cross-referenced bank statements. He'd closed it, looked at me over his glasses, and said, "Mrs. Miller, this is the most competent, ruthless, and thorough due diligence I've ever seen in my life. My firm's donation to the hospital was just the start. Now, let's talk about a real investment." It's funny, David used to laugh at the binder, my 5-inch, color-coded, crazy person project for Leo's medical care. He thought it was obsessive. He didn't realize what I was practicing. He didn't realize that for 8 years, I wasn't just managing a household. I was managing a hostile, complex, multi-million-dollar bureaucracy. I was negotiating with insurance companies who were trained to say no. I was scheduling the logistics for a team of 9 different specialists. I was managing multi-year budgets. I was, in short, already a CEO. He just never bothered to read my job description. Now, I'm sitting at my new desk, in my new office. In the top drawer, there's a new binder. A simple, 1-inch blue binder. It's for Leo. I opened it last week. The cover page just says, Boston Intensive Therapy Program. And tucked inside, a single piece of paper, a receipt, for $75,000, paid in full, by Miller Medical. It was the first dividend we ever paid. Mr. Harrison clears his throat, bringing me back to the boardroom. "Dr. Miller," he says, his voice all business, "your projections on fluid dynamics are aggressive. How can you guarantee you can scale production by Q3? My dad bristles. He's a scientist, not a salesman. He opens his mouth, ready to talk about the data, about the science. But before he can, he stops. He looks at me. He smiles. That big, proud, dad smile. Then he leans back in his chair, crosses his arms, and gestures to me. "You're asking the wrong Miller, Charles," my dad says, his voice brimming with a pride that almost makes my knees buckle. "I just had the idea." He points at me. "Eliza, she's the one who's building the empire." I just smiled at Mr. Harrison, my father's proud words still hanging in the air. "The production timeline is aggressive, Charles," I said, my voice perfectly steady. "But it's not impossible. It's just logistics." It was the same voice I had used on insurance reps, the same voice I'd used to schedule Leo's 9 different specialists. It was the voice of the person who gets things done, a voice David had heard 1,000 times but never actually listened to. My husband thought the most valuable thing I did was manage his social calendar and organize his QuickBooks. He was right. He just never, ever realized that the person who has all the passwords, who reconciles all the accounts, and who truly understands the cash flow, that's the person with all the real power. He underestimated me because I was a mom. He forgot that mom is just another title for a CEO who works 24/7, a COO who manages an impossible budget, a logistics expert who can triage 3 different crises before 7 a.m. He laughed at my little hobby of running the gala. He forgot that coordinating 500 high-ego guests, a dozen vendors, and a 6-figure budget, those skills are identical to running a company, strategy, finance, and knowing exactly who to call to get things done. He called the binder my crazy person project. He never saw it for what it was, a high-level executive playbook for a complex, high-stakes organization. David's fatal mistake wasn't the affair. It wasn't even the theft. His mistake was disrespect. He thought I was in over my head. He forgot that I was the one who had been holding my head and his above water for a decade. I didn't just reclaim my life, I reclaimed my value. I just took all those skills, the mom skills, the bookkeeping skills, the hobbyist skills, and I put them on my resume. And then I made myself the CEO. So let me ask you, what skills are you hiding in plain sight? What superpower are you dismissing as just being a mom, or just a hobby, or just something you do? What spreadsheet are you managing that no one else understands? If this story resonated with you, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We all have a story of being underestimated. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in the hardest of times.